The conference room fell dead silent when Sarah Chen stood up and slapped her resignation letter on the mahogany table. Every executive in their $1,000 suits stared in shock as she walked toward the door. What they didn't know was that her husband, sitting quietly in the back corner, was about to change everything with just 3 words that would destroy their careers forever. Sarah Chen never imagined her life would become a real-life fairy tale, but not the kind where everything ends happily ever after from the beginning. Her story started 3 years ago when she was just another struggling marketing graduate working at a small advertising agency in downtown Seattle, sharing a cramped studio apartment with her best friend and surviving on instant noodles and coffee. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She met Prince Alexander of Denmark at the most unlikely place possible, a community college night class on sustainable business practices. He was auditing the course under a fake name, Michael Anderson, claiming to be a graduate student researching environmental policy. For 6 months they sat next to each other every Tuesday evening, sharing notes and debating the future of green technology over vending machine coffee. Sarah was drawn to his passion for environmental causes and his genuine curiosity about how small businesses could make a global impact. He never mentioned royal titles, never dropped hints about his true identity, and certainly never acted like someone who had grown up in palaces. When he finally asked her out for dinner after their final exam, she said yes because he made her laugh and challenged her thinking, not because she had any idea she was dating European royalty. It wasn't until their 4th date, when a photographer spotted them at a quiet restaurant and started taking pictures, that Alexander finally revealed the truth. Prince Alexander Frederik Christian of Denmark, third in line to the throne, heir to a fortune that included vast business holdings across Europe, and someone whose every move was typically followed by international media. Their relationship moved quickly after that revelation, but Sarah loved that despite his royal status, Alexander treated her like an equal partner. He valued her opinions, especially her innovative ideas about sustainable marketing and ethical business practices. When they married 18 months later in a private ceremony that somehow managed to stay out of the tabloids, Sarah thought the hardest part of adjusting to royal life would be learning proper etiquette and remembering which fork to use at state dinners. She was wrong. The real challenge came when Alexander's business advisors suggested she should contribute meaningfully to the royal portfolio by getting involved with one of their major holdings. That's how she ended up at Lux Brands International, a massive luxury goods conglomerate that owned everything from high-end fashion labels to exclusive cosmetics lines to premium lifestyle products. What Sarah didn't know, and what Alexander's advisors conveniently forgot to mention, was that the Danish royal family actually owned 68% of Lux Brands International. It was one of their most profitable investments, generating billions in revenue annually and employing thousands of people across 12 countries. The executives running the company knew they ultimately answered to the royal family, but they had grown comfortable in their positions and increasingly resistant to any changes that might threaten their lucrative status quo. Sarah's first day at Lux Brands International should have been a celebration. She walked into their gleaming headquarters in Manhattan feeling excited and nervous, carrying a leather portfolio filled with research she had spent months preparing. Her ideas focused on sustainable packaging, ethical sourcing, and marketing strategies that would appeal to environmentally conscious consumers without sacrificing the luxury brand image that made their products so desirable. The executive team greeted her with polite smiles and condescending attitudes that made it clear they viewed her as nothing more than a royal spouse playing at being a businesswoman. James Mitchell, the chief executive officer, introduced her to the room as Princess Sarah, who wants to help us think about some environmental initiatives. The way he said it made it sound like she was a child who had wandered into an adult conversation. Rebecca Thompson, the chief marketing officer, actually laughed when Sarah suggested they could reduce packaging waste by 30% without compromising product presentation. "That's adorable," she said with a smile that never reached her eye. "But our customers expect a certain level of luxury, and that includes beautiful packaging. We can't just put our products in plain boxes and expect people to pay premium prices." Sarah tried to explain that luxury and sustainability weren't mutually exclusive, that their research showed younger consumers were increasingly willing to pay more for products that aligned with their values. She presented case studies of other luxury brands that had successfully implemented sustainable practices while maintaining their premium image and actually increasing profit. The executives listened with barely concealed impatience, checking their phones and exchanging glances that clearly communicated their shared opinion that she had no idea what she was talking about. When she finished her presentation, David Rodriguez, the chief financial officer, cleared his throat and delivered what he probably thought was a gentle reality check. "Princess Sarah, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but luxury brands operate differently than the small companies you might be familiar with. Our customers aren't shopping at farmers markets or buying organic groceries. They want exclusivity, prestige, and the kind of experience that makes them feel special. Environmental concerns are secondary to maintaining our brand position. That first meeting set the tone for everything that followed. Over the next 6 months, Sarah attended countless strategy sessions where her ideas were politely dismissed, innovation meetings where her suggestions were ignored, and planning discussions where she was treated like an observer rather than a contributor. She watched as the company continued practices she knew were wasteful and outdated, missing opportunities to connect with changing consumer preferences and falling behind competitors who were successfully integrating sustainability into their luxury offering. The breaking point came during a quarterly review meeting where Sarah presented a comprehensive proposal for transforming their entire product line. She had spent 3 months developing detailed financial projections, market research data, and implementation timelines for a sustainability initiative that would position Luxe Brands International as the industry leader in environmentally responsible luxury goods. Her presentation was flawless. She demonstrated how sustainable packaging could actually reduce costs while appealing to younger demographics. She showed how ethical sourcing could create compelling marketing narratives that would differentiate their products from competitors. She presented evidence that luxury consumers were increasingly making purchasing decisions based on brand values, not just product quality or exclusivity. The executive sat through her entire presentation in stony silence. When she finished and asked for questions, the room remained quiet for what felt like an eternity. Finally, James Mitchell leaned back in his chair and delivered the response that would change everything. "Princess Sarah, I think we need to have an honest conversation here. You seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding of our business model and our customer base. We've been successful for decades by focusing on quality, exclusivity, and luxury experiences. Our shareholders expect consistent returns, not experimental initiatives that might jeopardize our market position." Rebecca Thompson nodded in agreement. "Sustainability is a nice concept, but it's not realistic for our industry. Our customers want beautiful products in beautiful packaging, and they're willing to pay for that experience. We can't compromise our brand identity to chase trends that might disappear in a few years." David Rodriguez added his own dismissive commentary. "The financial projections in your proposal are based on assumptions that don't account for the realities of luxury retail. Implementation costs would be enormous, and there's no guarantee that consumers would respond positively to such dramatic changes in our product presentation." Sarah felt her cheeks burning with frustration and embarrassment, but she forced herself to remain professional. "I understand your concerns, but the market research clearly shows that consumer preferences are shifting. Companies that adapt to these changes will thrive, while those that resist will lose market share to more innovative competitors." That's when Michael Foster, the Chief Operations Officer, delivered the comment that finally pushed Sarah past her breaking point. He actually chuckled as he spoke, as if he was explaining something obvious to a confused child. "Princess Sarah, with all due respect, you're not really qualified to make strategic decisions for a company of this size and complexity. You have a marketing degree from a state university and a few years of experience at a small agency. We have decades of combined experience running multinational corporations and generating billions in revenue. Maybe you should focus on the charitable initiatives that royal spouses typically handle and leave the business decisions to people who understand how these things actually work." The condescension in his voice was so thick that Sarah could practically taste. Around the table, other executives were nodding in agreement, or trying to hide their smirks behind coffee cups and notepads. She realized that no matter how well researched her ideas were, no matter how compelling her evidence, no matter how passionate her argument, these people would never take her seriously because they had already decided she was nothing more than a privileged princess playing at being a businesswoman. Sarah stood up slowly, her hands trembling slightly with anger and humiliation. She looked around the room at these executives who had spent months dismissing her ideas, belittling her experience, and treating her like an inconvenience they had to tolerate because of her marriage to Alexander. "You know what?" she said, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "You're absolutely right. I don't belong here." She opened her leather portfolio and pulled out a single sheet of paper that she had prepared weeks ago, but hoped she would never need to use. Her resignation letter was brief and professional, thanking them for the opportunity and explaining that she had decided to pursue other interests that would better utilize her skills and experience. Sarah placed the letter in the center of the conference table, where it seemed to glow like a beacon under the harsh fluorescent lights. The executive stared at it in surprise, probably not expecting her to give up so easily after months of persistent effort to contribute to their company. "I wish you all the best in your future endeavors," she said with as much dignity as she could muster. "I hope you find the success and innovation you're looking for, As she turned toward the door, Sarah noticed something that made her pause for just a moment. In the back corner of the conference room, almost hidden behind a tall plant and a stack of presentation materials, sat a man she hadn't noticed when the meeting began. He was wearing a simple gray suit and had been so quiet throughout the entire discussion that she had completely forgotten he was there. The man was taking notes in a small leather notebook, and when their eyes met briefly, he gave her an almost imperceptible nod that seemed to convey both understanding and encouragement. Sarah wondered who he was and why he had been observing their meeting, but she was too focused on maintaining her composure to ask questions. She walked toward the conference room door with her head held high, knowing that every executive in the room was watching her leave and probably already planning how they would spin her departure to make themselves look like the reasonable parties in this situation. Just as Sarah reached for the door handle, she heard the quiet scraping of a chair being pushed back from the table. The mysterious observer in the back corner was standing up, closing his notebook with deliberate precision, and walking toward the front of the room where the executives were still processing what had just happened. Sarah paused with her hand on the door handle, suddenly curious about what this quiet man might have to say about the meeting they had all just witnessed. Something about his calm confidence and the way the executives were now watching him with obvious nervousness suggested that his presence in the room might have been more significant than anyone had realized. The man reached the front of the conference room and looked around the table at each executive individually, as if he was memorizing their faces for some future purpose. Then he spoke 3 words that would change everything for everyone in that room.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
What happened next would shock everyone, including Sarah herself, and reveal the true power dynamics that had been hidden beneath months of corporate politics and professional dismissal. But that revelation was still moments away, and for now, Sarah Chen stood at the threshold of what she thought was the end of her business career, completely unaware that it was actually about to become the beginning of something far more significant than she could have ever imagined. "I own this company." The 3 words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Alexander stepped forward from his corner position, and suddenly every executive in the room recognized the face they had seen in countless international newspapers and business magazines. Prince Alexander Frederik Christian of Denmark, whose family's investment portfolio included majority ownership of Lux Brands International. James Mitchell's face went completely white. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged. Rebecca Thompson dropped her coffee cup, sending hot liquid splashing across her presentation notes. David Rodriguez actually pushed his chair back from the table, as if he could somehow distance himself from the conversation that had just occurred. Sarah turned around slowly, her hand still on the door handle, and stared at her husband in complete shock. Alexander had never mentioned that his family owned the company where she had been working. She had known about various royal investments and business holdings, but he had always been vague about the specific details, claiming that financial advisors handled most of the day-to-day operations. "You've been sitting there this entire time?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander nodded, his expression serious and focused entirely on the executives who were now squirming in their expensive chairs. "I've been observing these meetings for 3 months. I wanted to see how my wife's ideas were being received and whether this management team was capable of innovation and adaptation." Michael Foster, who had delivered the most condescending remarks about Sarah's qualifications, looked like he might actually. His face had gone from pale to green, and small beads of sweat were forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning that kept the conference room at a comfortable temperature. "Your Highness," James Mitchell finally managed to stammer, "we had no idea you were attending these meetings. If we had known, we certainly would have given Princess Sarah's proposals more serious consideration." Alexander's laugh was cold and humorless. "So you're telling me that you would have treated my wife's ideas differently if you had known I was watching? That's exactly the problem. Every proposal she presented was backed by solid research, compelling market data, and innovative thinking that could have positioned this company as an industry leader. Instead, you dismissed her contributions because you decided she wasn't qualified to participate in strategic discussion." Rebecca Thompson tried to salvage the situation with a nervous smile. "Your Highness, please understand that we were simply being cautious about implementing major changes without thorough analysis. Princess Sarah's ideas have merit, but we needed more time to evaluate the potential risks and benefits." "More time?" Alexander pulled out his small leather notebook and flipped through several pages. Sarah presented her first sustainability proposal 6 months ago. Her second presentation included detailed financial projections that your own accounting department verified as accurate. Her third proposal addressed every concern you raised in previous meetings. How much more time did you need? Sarah watched this confrontation unfold with a mixture of vindication and embarrassment. She was grateful that Alexander was defending her work, but she felt uncomfortable about the way the power dynamic had suddenly shifted. These executives who had spent months treating her like an unwelcome child
were now practically groveling before her husband. David Rodriguez attempted to explain their position. Your Highness, we've always prioritized maintaining the luxury brand image that has made Lux Brands International so successful. We were concerned that focusing too heavily on sustainability might compromise the exclusivity that our customers expect. Alexander's response was swift and cutting. Our customers are evolving, and companies that fail to evolve with them will be left behind. Sarah's research showed that 63% of luxury consumers under 40 consider environmental responsibility when making purchasing decisions. Instead of embracing that opportunity, you've spent 6 months explaining why innovation is impossible. The room fell silent again as the executives processed the implications of Alexander's words. They were beginning to realize that their dismissive treatment of Sarah hadn't just insulted a royal spouse, it had demonstrated their fundamental inability to recognize valuable business opportunities and adapt to changing market conditions. Sarah finally spoke, her voice stronger now that she understood the full context of what had been happening. I never wanted special treatment because of my marriage. I wanted my ideas to be evaluated based on their merit. But you made it clear that you had already decided I wasn't worth listening to, regardless of the quality of my research or the potential benefits of my proposals. James Mitchell tried one more desperate attempt at damage control. Princess Sarah, Your Highness, we sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding. We're absolutely committed to implementing sustainable practices and would be honored to work with Princess Sarah on developing comprehensive environmental initiatives. Alexander shook his head. The time for apologies and sudden enthusiasm has passed. Sarah resigned because you created an environment where her contributions were consistently devalued and dismissed. That resignation stands. He walked over to Sarah and took her hand gently. However, as the majority owner of this company, I'm making some immediate changes to the leadership structure. Effective immediately, James Mitchell, Rebecca Thompson, David Rodriguez, and Michael Foster are relieved of their position. You'll receive severance packages according to your contracts, but your decision-making authority ends today. The executive sat in stunned silence as Alexander continued. Sarah will be assuming the role of Chief Executive Officer, with full authority to implement the sustainability initiatives you spent months rejecting. The board of directors will receive a complete report about this situation, along with detailed documentation of how innovative proposals were handled by the previous management team. Sarah squeezed Alexander's hand and looked at him with surprise. I never asked to be CEO. I just wanted to contribute meaningfully to sustainable business practices. I know, Alexander replied softly, but you've demonstrated vision, persistence, and the ability to develop comprehensive solutions to complex problems. This company needs leadership that can adapt to changing consumer preferences and market conditions. You've proven you have those capabilities even when others couldn't recognize them. Over the following weeks, the transition at Lux Brands International became a case study in corporate transformation. Sarah implemented her sustainability initiatives with remarkable success, partnering with environmental organizations, redesigning packaging systems, and developing marketing campaigns that highlighted the company's commitment to responsible luxury. The results exceeded even her optimistic projections. Sales increased by 27% in the first quarter under her leadership, driven primarily by younger consumers who were attracted to the combination of luxury quality and environmental responsibility. Customer satisfaction surveys showed unprecedented approval ratings, and industry publications began featuring Lux Brands International as an example of successful sustainable transformation. 6 months after that confrontational meeting, Sarah received an unexpected email from Rebecca Thompson. The former marketing officer had found a position at a smaller company and wanted to express her gratitude for the learning experience. She wrote that being forced to confront her own biases and assumptions had ultimately made her a better professional and a better person. Sarah was surprised to find that she felt genuinely happy for Rebecca's growth and success. The experience had taught her important lessons about leadership, perseverance, and the value of staying true to her convictions even when facing opposition from people who seemed more qualified or experienced. The story of Sarah's transformation from dismissed royal spouse to successful CEO spread quickly through business networks and social media. She became a sought-after speaker at entrepreneurship conferences and sustainability summits, sharing her insights about innovation, persistence, and the importance of evaluating ideas based on merit rather than the perceived status of the person presenting them. Alexander continued to attend Sarah's business meetings, but now he sat in the front of the room as a supportive partner rather than a hidden observer. The couple worked together on expanding sustainable practices throughout the royal family's various business holdings, creating a model for responsible luxury that other companies began to emulate. The most significant change, however, was in Sarah's own confidence and self-perception. She no longer questioned whether she belonged in executive meetings or doubted the value of her idea. The experience had taught her that true leadership isn't about having the most impressive credentials or the longest resume. It's about having the vision to see opportunities that others miss, and the courage to pursue those opportunities despite resistance. Looking back on that difficult period, Sarah realized that the executives' dismissive treatment had actually been a gift in disguise. Their refusal to take her seriously had forced her to develop stronger arguments, more comprehensive research, and more compelling presentation. When she finally had the opportunity to implement her ideas, she was thoroughly prepared for success. The conference room where Sarah had once been laughed at and dismissed was now the site of weekly innovation meetings, where team members from all levels of the company contributed ideas for continuous improvement. The culture had shifted from one of rigid hierarchy and resistance to one of collaborative problem-solving and creative thinking. Sarah's story became a powerful reminder that expertise and wisdom can come from unexpected sources, and that the most valuable innovations often emerge from people who see familiar problems from fresh perspective. Her journey from overlooked royal spouse to successful CEO demonstrated that persistence, preparation, and principled leadership can overcome even the most entrenched resistance to change. The executives who had once dismissed her learned their own valuable lessons about assumptions, respect, and the importance of recognizing talent regardless of its packaging. Their experience served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting preconceptions cloud professional judgment and the cost of failing to embrace innovative thinking. Today, Lux Brands International stands as one of the most successful sustainable luxury companies in the world, proving that environmental responsibility and premium quality can not only coexist but actually enhance each other. Sarah's vision of ethical luxury has become the industry standard, inspiring countless other companies to reconsider their practices and priorities. The transformation that began with laughter and dismissal in a corporate conference room ultimately changed an entire industry, and demonstrated the power of believing in your ideas even when others cannot see their value. Sometimes the most profound changes come from the most unexpected sources, and the most important innovations emerge from those who refuse to accept that things must always be done the way they've always been done. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.